you so much for coming to join us this afternoon and to celebrate these books with us. Whether you're an academic, whether you live with an academic, or whether you're a student, you've watched academics, you all know how much goes into the production of a book and how much sits behind a production of the book. So we thank all of you for joining us this afternoon to celebrate these books. We're not actually launching a book. We're actually celebrating 5 books, 3 of which are here. 2 are meant to be launched later this year. But we will just introduce them to you this afternoon. But our chair for this afternoon is our new head of school, Professor Juliet Perumal, who you met this morning. Just before I hand over the mic to Juliet, I'd just like to say 2 things. Please look at the posters from the different bits of research work that we've prepared around our work. And then I did mention to you earlier today, on the tree at the back there, are messages, what research would you like to see REAL do in the next 10 years? So REAL in 2032, we would really like all of you to leave a message for us, because we would like to understand from everyone here, what are some of the key areas that you see as important areas of research in the next 10 years. So please remember, the young ladies are telling me, please remind everyone to leave a message, okay? And read some of the ones of friends of ours who couldn't be here that have actually sent in. So please do that. So ladies and gentlemen, all are friends of REAL, I'm going to hand you over to our head of school, Professor Juliet Perumal, who will be chairing the session with the 5 books.
Thank you, Presha, and once again, a very warm welcome to all of you. I know it's been a very rich day. It's been like a carnival of ideas and forward thinking. So I'm asked to just make a few introductory comments and then introduce you to the authors who will come up. And I've been told that they've given 3 minutes each to summarize 350 pages in each of their books. So that'll be a good exercise in précis speaking, I believe. So you probably heard throughout the day that Wits, the University of Witwatersrand, prides itself on being a research-intensive university. And a research-intensive university strives to engage in knowledge production, knowledge deconstruction, and being thought leaders that make data-driven led decisions. The REAL Center has actually given credence to what it means to be nested within a research-intensive university. In the past 10 years, it has engaged in a wide range of cutting-edge international and local research projects and has developed a strong reputation for practical, research-grounded studies based in empirical evidence. This has resulted in a high-quality publications record, and also they've forged a lot of international networks, both in Africa and, of course, globally. The REAL Center has participated in a number of high-level policy processes, in post-school and skills development systems, and has made and continues to make significant impact on the policy environment, both in South Africa and internationally. This book launch testifies to the theoretical policy and practice and social impact that REAL has had both locally and internationally. It has produced 5 books, which has explored various aspects of education and work relationships. And this cocktail event offers a platform for REAL to showcase at least 5 of the books that they have produced, and so doing contributed to knowledge production. So I'm going to, and just to say that these books have not just been authored by highly acclaimed academics, but it's also brought into the fore scholars, masters, PhD students, postdoctoral research fellows who have also co-authored the publications, and that I think testifies once again to just what it means to be a part of a research-intensive university, that you do not wait for the completion of your PhD or your dissertation, master's dissertation before you start to publish, but you publish work in progress and while it is in process. So I'm going to be calling each of the authors, and some books are multiply authored, but the first book entitled Selling Out Education by Stephanie Allais, published in 2014. I forget your name, but you are going to tell people, give them a sense of the time. Huh?
Thanks, Prof. Perumal. And we're doing the books in chronological order. So this is the first book that we produced at Real. And as Prof. Perumal said, in 2014, and it's a book that I personally really hoped would have a sell-by date and would only be of purely academic interest by now. So I'm kind of disappointed that that is not the case. And obviously, as an academic, I have to be kind of self-interestedly pleased that the topic is still very topical. The reason I am disappointed is because I really didn't think that people would still continue to believe in qualifications frameworks as a silver bullet for all of the problems in solving the relationships between the education system and the world of work. And particularly the idea of learning outcomes and in particular employer-specified learning outcomes as the way to improve this relationship. I thought that, you know, the evidence, what was really striking, I first researched the South African qualifications framework in its original design, and there's a chapter on that in this book, its history, its design, etc. And then I went to the International Labour Organization and I researched qualifications frameworks in 16 countries. And what was so striking in this whole world of outcomes-based qualifications was that there were these incredibly strong claims being made for this policy with no evidence in its favor. So I thought, well, now that we've actually produced some evidence, and more evidence has been produced since then, it's quite obvious that this policy is not a silver bullet, but yet last year we did research across the African continent. Donor agencies are aggressively pushing African vocational education systems. This is the solution. As soon as you've got a qualifications framework and the employers are specifying the learning outcomes, everything's going to be fine. So unfortunately or fortunately, it's a book that it is our oldest book here today, but it is still incredibly pertinent. The book tries to bring together the political economy of qualifications in labor markets with ideas about knowledge and the role of education. And perhaps the most kind of important, for me, argument that I'm trying to make in the book is that there are all sorts of important roles that education plays in society and in the economy. From the basics of ensuring that people are literate and numerate to the development of research and innovation. But paradoxically, it's much more likely that education will be able to play these roles and other roles that are important in society and the economy if it is valued in its own right and not seen as a tool of the economy. And really, it's the acquisition of bodies of knowledge that provides the basis for the integrity of education as a system that has its own internal justification separate from the economy and the short-term needs of society. It's really core to what is common to humanity. But at the same time, if we take that seriously, we can build education and training systems that really do contribute to their societies. So that's really kind of at the heart of this book, which I think is still kind of topical today.
Thank you. Listen, you've done exceptionally well. You've 3 minutes, right? The second book that we're going to be introducing is co-authored by Stephanie Allais and Yael Shalem. It's a 2018 publication, and it's entitled Knowledge, Curriculum, and Educational Preparation for Work. Yeah.
Right. Steph got me to speak about the book on and I accepted on condition that I'll be drunk. So the book is about preparation, knowledge, curriculum, preparation for work. And it's actually about a conundrum. And the conundrum is, that the sphere of education and the sphere of work are probably the most, what's the word? The spheres that are mostly different from each other than any other spheres of society. In other words, education and work, the sphere of education and the sphere of work operate completely different. So in education, we ask questions. In the sphere of work, we want solutions. In the sphere, in education, mistakes are opportunity for thinking. In the sphere of work, mistakes are crisis. In education, we produce knowledge by stopping time and forgetting space. We distantiate ourselves in order to produce knowledge systematically. In education, we reproduce, in work, we reproduce knowledge, but we also produce knowledge that is contextually specific and time specific. So we've got two spheres that are completely different and maybe even antagonistic to each other in their structure. And yet what society wants us to do, they want one sphere to mirror the other. Guess which sphere needs to mirror the other? Education has to mirror work. No one asks work to mirror education, which I will drink for. But education is asked to mirror work. So, in order to do that, which is an impossible task, if you think about it, anything in society will come in. Because here is another difference. Education is there to try and address inequalities. Work reproduce inequalities. So what we were tasked in this book, and we have got a collection of scholars, local and international, to think about all the different aspects that mediate between very different spheres. So the books talk about curriculum, the book talk about what does it actually mean to create a curriculum for an occupation. Can we? How we do it? The book talks about what kind of qualification will enable people to get or better chances to get work. Will short qualification, small credits will do the trick, or broad qualification, broad pathway are more just and more productive? What kind of knowledge? Is it 3 minutes? Okay, 3 minutes. This is the most important, what kind of knowledge can make the transition from systematic inquiry to applied context-specific application relatively smooth? And if you're interested, there are some copies that can give you some answers.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So I just wanted to maybe just interrupt the flow to let you know that there are some of these books that are available on the book stand here. Knowledge, Curriculum, and Preparation for Work, which is what Yael has just talked about, is available for purchase. Selling Out Education, the one that Stephanie introduced, is also available for purchase. And the next book that I am going to ask the authors to come forward to talk about is Green Skills Research in South Africa, Models, Cases, and Methods. It was co-authored by Eureta, Rosenberg, Presha, Ramsarup, and Heila, Lotz, Sistitka. It's a 2020 publication, and this is it here. And then just also to do some promo, they are retailing at an author's discounted rate here for you. So please support it, okay? So Presha, you're going to come and talk us through this. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. So I'm going to introduce the book. I'll start and Heila will come in. This book is the product of many years of work. I think like Heila will probably give 3 generations of research. The imperative for the environmental transition or the green transition or the just transition, whatever you want to call it, is very clear to everyone. However, the educational response to the transition has been much slower. So while educational stakeholders and educational systems have recognized the need for a just transition and recognized the need for a green transition, the way education systems responded, whether it's in their curriculum frameworks, in their skills planning frameworks, in their assessment frameworks, in their resources and materials, what we found over these 3 generations, and we've done various different, you'll have to read the book, various different elements of research over time, is that the response was delayed, reactive, fragmented, and just ad hoc. So in essence, and the book actually makes the point as it sets up, in essence, and South Africa is a perfect example. All of our research was here, but the lessons are actually wide-reaching. So if you look at how South Africa performed in a 21-country survey that looked at environmental systems, so the policies for what environmental goals were being set in relation to their skills, we performed 20th out of 21 countries. That's how bad our skills policies were in relation to the environmental goals that we had set in as a country. And what this book actually starts to unpack is a methodological framework of how to start to think about skills for the future, how to start, and Melissa made the point, no one's got it right, and trust me, I've done the research. We've done a huge amount of trying to find ways of people trying to look at future skills. There's no skills anticipation system existing that can rethink a value chain, actually, because in order to understand a future skill, you need to rethink the value chain. You need to look at where the environmental issues are in the value chain. Think about how you would transition that, make it more sustainable, then what jobs would be impacted on. And that's the kind of methodological work that this book starts to unpack. So the book has 3 basic sections. The first section sets up the imperative for skills for a just transition. It kind of looks at why, and it offers a conceptual framing. My 3 minutes over. Oh, sorry, Heila. And it offers a conceptual framing of, so the book essentially offers some conceptual constraints and methodological constraints in working with skills for a just transition. Chair, I'm going to give and I just to actually say the third author is not here today because it's her 60th birthday today. So happy birthday, Eureta, wherever you are.
Thank you very much, Presha. I'll just be very short, actually, and maybe just give you a sense of why this work may be necessary in our society. I think we all know that we have major problems with energy issues in the country, that we're no longer able to, for not very long, able to sustain energy systems produced from poor grade coal, because it's also producing carbon emissions into the atmosphere, which is producing the kind of floods that we recently experienced in KwaZulu-Natal. The fact that the city of Gqeberha, where I've just flew from this morning, is running out of water. In fact, they almost have no water left. We had Cape Town drought a few years ago. We have farmers that are unable to find water for their fields. That affects the food that we are, aiming to eat here this evening. So basically what we're sitting with is a very, very unsustainable world and an unsustainable system. And so what we need to do in our workplaces and in our education institutions, in our schools, in our communities, is we have to learn to protect the ocean, heal the earth, love water, be energy-wise. You can see them up on the wall there, alleviate excessive wealth. That's not one of the SDGs, by the way. It's the one that's missing. The other SDG that's missing is hold big business to account, because there's no clauses that hold transnational corporations to account. So this book is actually about rethinking the skills system in order to rethink our society. And it's so interesting when you start thinking about how we relate to the earth that we are dependent on, there is only one planet, as they said. Ban Ki-moon said there's no planet B, there's only planet A. As we start to rethink our relationship with this place and the systems that we're so dependent on, we actually have to start to change everything. We have to change the way that we think about work. We have to think about the way we think about education, about ourselves, our communities, what we do, what is good to do in the interests of others, both current and future generations, and so on. And so we try to just look at 30 years of research in which we've been trying to work out this project out of our center, which is the Environmental Learning Research Center at Rhodes University. Presha was one of the leading scholars in this particular area. Eureta and myself have been working on this project for 30 years. Still standing, yes, not giving up. And yeah, so we just invite you to have a look at the book. But essentially, it's really ultimately when political economy meets political ecology, because the entire kind of crisis that we're sitting with is a political ecology crisis, actually, and it intersects with political economy that transforms the entire way that we think about skills. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Such fascinating and important work. So the fourth book that we want to introduce is entitled Transitioning Vocational Education and Training in Africa, a Social Skills Ecosystem Perspective, the Vet for Collection. It's a 22 publication, and Scovia will be talking to us about it. Scovia. Sorry, Scovia.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kovia. I'm a researcher and a master's student at the Rail Center. So we are actually going to talk about this book. Professor, could you please come? Yeah, so the book is about vocational education and training in Africa. And this book draws on the empirical data of a GCRF-funded project, the VET Africa 4.0. So this project was really interesting because it looked at two countries, Uganda and South Africa, and each of the two countries had 4 very unique cases. The first case was in Uganda in a district called Hoima that had recently been found to have oil. And in that case, we were investigating the political economy and ecological issues with regards to the oil and gas sector, particularly how it is linked to the skills and employment within the surrounding. The second case was in Gulu, an area that is recovering from a very long conflict of 20 years. And in this case, we focused on the nature of the relationship between youth entrepreneurship, community development, and skills for development. The third case was Durban. In Durban, we explored the impact of the national strategic economic projects on the VET systems within that area. And lastly, the Eastern Cape, where we examine the development of inclusive, sustainable development, looking at how a multi-stakeholder partnerships reorient curricula, research, and programs towards rural and inclusive development. I hand over to my professor.
Thanks, Scovia. I think the main point was, in terms of thinking about these different cases, was looking at different kinds of scale and levels of intervention. So industry-led in the oil and gas sector, state-led interventions in Durban, and much more community-led local organization in Allais and also in Gulu. And it gave us a lens for thinking about skills ecosystems not at the level, or skills systems not at the level of the state and national systems, which is the kind of general lens in which we tend to analyze skills systems, but actually looking much more at a local level. What happens within a particular community who are the skills players? How do people draw down from the policy level and the funding mechanisms that might impact into that skills system? And so we drew on the concept of social ecosystems and really developed a European UK kind of model of thinking about skills ecosystems, and applied that and really developed that in the local context. And I think it picks up, in a way, as a kind of a bit of a capstone on the work that had happened before, because it taps into the kind of critiques around national policies and the way in which they standardize processes that are not necessarily appropriate in specific contexts, but it also addresses questions of local knowledge, local needs, and how qualifications and so on. I need to wrap up. I think there was a silver bullet to the head there, I think. I think, I mean, the point is made. I think that the book is not actually available here yet. It's so hot off the press that it's not actually...
November, yeah.
It's going to be out in November, so look out for that when it comes. But, yeah. The
24, and they've acknowledged the scoop.
Yeah, I mean, the book is authored by the Vet Africa 4.0 collective, which included 24 people, a lot of researchers in Gulu and in the Eastern Cape from Rhodes, from Gulu University, as well as colleagues from Nottingham, Wits, and Rhodes. And so we really worked collaboratively across those institutions and across those teams. And I think it also presented a different way of authoring work within this space. So thanks.
Thank you and congratulations on that book. Just hot up coming up, November, you say. And then the fifth book that we want to showcase this evening is entitled Higher Education and the Public Good in Africa. It's been authored by, sure, that's a long list of authors, but you're going to bear with me because I want to mention each of it. It's good to see your name in print, I think, okay? So it's Elaine Unterhalter, Stephanie Allais, Dr. Ntobisi Ndaba, recently graduated, I think it was July. Congratulations again.
Yes.
Yeah. Yesterday?
Yes, he got his results. Yes.
Okay, you got his results yesterday, so congratulations. I see the extra glow, you really are beaming. Colleen Howell, Christine Adu Yeboah, Sam Fungwa, Jibrin Ibrahim, Tristan McCowan, Dr. Palisa Moletbatsi, am I saying that? Congratulations. Yes. I think, did you graduate in July then?
I graduated.
Yes, you did. Yes, I did. I remember you in all of your red glory. Louise Morley, Sapelo Ingwangu, you must excuse me about my pronunciations. Ibrahim Oanda, Mark Oboonyo, Moses Okech, Lerato Posheli, and Cecilia Salepi, a 2022 publication. Doctor?
Thank you very much. So this book comes out of a research study that we conducted in 4 African countries, which is South Africa, Kenya, Ghana, and Nigeria, which was focusing on the relationship between higher education and the public good and how it's conceptualized in those countries. And it comes out of 3 concerns. The first one is that the literature on the relationship between higher education and the public good mainly draws on insights and conceptualizations that are rooted in Europe and in North America. And those may not have any sort of relationship to the conditions in the African context. So that required a very contextualized understanding of this relationship. The second one is that conditions in Africa may or may not produce public good outcomes, and there is a need for that to be contextualized conceptualized in the African context. And then the last one is the issue of evaluative frameworks, which effectively exclude institutions in Africa and the kind of work that these institutions do because of the criteria that devalues the work that these institutions do. So drawing on insights from higher education stakeholders in these different countries, the book provides an analysis of how the relationship between higher education and the public good is understood and enacted in these countries. And in the book, we argue that this relationship tends to be understood in two ways. The first is an instrumental way, which speaks or sees higher education as leading to a particular manifestation of the public good in the future, which may take the form of economic, cultural, intellectual, and other forms of public good. Then the second is the intrinsic notion of the public good, which sees higher education as itself a public good and also as a space in which the public good can be experienced. So using these two notions, we try to move towards a more contextualized understanding of the relationship between higher education and the public good. And in doing so, we argue that, one, public good means serving society as a whole, which speaks to universities contributing to their immediate communities through activities such as community engagement and also addressing social problems in society. And then the second argument we make is that public good means access, which is the idea that universities or higher education serves the public good when it is accessible to the public, not only in terms of enrollments, but also in terms of the physical access to, campuses and spaces like that. Then the third argument we make is that public good means nurture and care, which is the idea that universities serve the public good when they take good care of their staff and their students. And this speaks to a lot of issues, such as addressing issues of racism on campus and issues of alienating institutional cultures and issues of gender-based violence, student hunger, and all such issues as well. Then the fourth argument we make is that the public good rests on conditions of possibility within a particular context. And these can be material conditions, it can be ideational conditions, political or relational conditions, that the relationship between higher education and the public good needs to be understood in relation to those conditions. But the most important contribution that this book makes is what we call a dashboard indicator, which Balisa is one of the people that we're working on. Because one of the things the book does is to sort of provide a critique of the evaluative frameworks that exist and how they are excluding the work that African countries do. So what we suggest is that a contextualized indicator framework might be an important resource to help us ground and steer ideas around higher education and the public good in context. And what we do is to provide this dashboard indicator, which is not hierarchical like many other university rankings, but it is looking at multiple dimensions that speaks to the intrinsic forms, the intrinsic dimensions, and also the instrumental dimensions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the 5 books that Riel wanted to showcase. It kind of is a good encapsulation of the work that you've done over the past 10 years. And then just to say that there are several other publications in the pipeline, but Riel has also published a whole host of academic journal publications, which if you're interested, you could, in accessing, you could go to their website and download these. So that brings me to the end of this session. I just want to once again reiterate how proud we are in the Wits School of Education for the work that Riel does, and just pretty much looking around here would testify, the walls scream out and testify to the kind of success. So to all of the team, everything of the best for the next 10 to 100 years, I believe. Please join us in the cocktails that have been provided, and we will see you tomorrow, hopefully.